Well, good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 146. And I swore to myself I would never say evening anymore because you could be watching or listening to this anytime. So I've been so good. Hello. I'm Tristan Jutra.
Let's start over again. I'm Will Silver.
There's no starting over in baseball.
Uh,
So,
oh,
yeah, apologies for my crappy audio last week. I thought I double checked, but of course, somehow using the wrong input, I figured, and was going off my laptop mic. That's like the second time it's happened in the last few months. My apologies to your ears, everyone. Hi, Will. You ready to do this?
let's do it to it.
We're missing Gray Williams. He was gonna be here. Had overcome his technical hurdles, and they dragged him back in. So I don't know if we're going to see him this evening. I kind of suspect not. Hopefully, fingers crossed for next week. And Tasia, she's on her walkabout.
I missed them both,
Exactly.
especially Tasia. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Well, she'll be back one way or the other. She's working on a very special project, and I'm sure she'll be filling us in on that. But let's get into reams and reams of Apple Vision Pro follow-up, Will. So last week we talked about Apple Vision Pro a little because the embargoes had lifted, and so people were able to start publishing their stories from places like the Wall Street Journal and others. So we got to see some real world experience with Apple's new spatial computing device, and what normal people call a mixed reality headset or extended reality headset or what have you. And as we've discussed last week, the reviews have been generally pretty positive, maybe almost more positive than we might expect, given the usual caveats that it's a version 1.0 sort of product. Concerns about the head and neck fatigue for extended wear, although Joanna Storm from the Wall Street Journal, she wore it for the better part of a day. And battery life, between 2 and 4 hours for the battery pack. So you either got to plug in or put an extra battery booster on it or what have you. There are apparently plans for some additional battery packs. Some people have taken it apart and found that if there's a little hole that you can poke a pin into and you can pop out this weird custom connector. It looks like someone described it as the final boss of lightning connectors. It's like a 12-pin quasi lightning connector into the battery pack on the Apple Vision Pro. So that's kind of neat. iFixit has done a teardown and has revealed just how complicated, how sophisticated this device is. And we've seen, but since last week, I guess the device actually went on sale for real to normies on Friday, February 2nd. The year of our Lord 2024. So you've got all sorts of other YouTubers and quote unquote influencers and just regular tech media people who didn't have review units. They're starting to give their impressions, hands-on and otherwise, and they were not necessarily restricted by any conditions that Apple might have imposed on those who had review units. So now we're kind of getting some different takes on the experience, and it's kind of cool. So I thought to get us started this episode, we'd do some Apple Vision Pro follow-up from a variety of perspectives, starting with some boring stuff and getting more and more interesting as we go along. How does that sound, Will?
Sounds awesome.
All right, locked and loaded, ready to roll. So let's start. And when I say boring, I mean, I'm just going to quick shout out to Enterprise, because maybe to normies like us, Enterprise seems boring. We're talking about large multi-location corporations and what can they do with technology, because that can often make or break a technology or a product from a company. Because if you can get enough scale happening and volume purchases and the like, sometimes that can help bankroll the further development of said product and help get the price down eventually for use by regular consumers who maybe don't want to spend a minimum of $3,500 to get in the door with a product like the Apple Vision Pro. So with the beta version of Vision OS 1.1, which is in testing right now, Apple has brought enterprise device management to the Vision Pro. Sometimes it's referred to as multiple device management or MDM. So this is the sort of thing that organizations will use to control devices within the organization, including laptops, iPads, smartphones, and the like, and they can do remote wipes, enable and disable them, and the like. So having this kind of these kind of features enabled for Apple Vision Pro sort of signals to enterprise that we're taking care of your needs, we know your needs, and they see maybe a potential market in there for enterprise applications. And there are a number of venture capitalists out there who think Vision Pro has a shot in the enterprise. And of course, these VCs are the types of folks who are funding startups that may be customizing applications for enterprise and other customers. There's only about 600 native Vision Pro apps out there at the moment. And in a recent survey, 81% of customers were concerned about the absence of apps from major developers. But if we have some startups, filling the gap on the enterprise side and getting things going on applications such as in-field remote break/fix. So this is the kind of thing that we've been talking about for the better part of a decade, if not more, where you can do just-in-time training or having augmented reality overlays. You're an aviation engineer and you're going and replacing a part on, let's say, a Boeing 737 MAX 9. And you have information on the screen on a heads-up display, and may be able to have overlays on certain devices or panels to be able to help you navigate through things. So these sorts of things have been experimented with. We've not seen like huge adoption, but a device as powerful as the Apple Vision Pro in this domain might finally make this thing a bit more mainstream in enterprise, at least for that sort of hands-on kind of application. So we're starting to see a little bit of interest from the enterprise side of things and from the investment community in that, which is promising on that end of things. So again, you start to get people working in organizations to use this device as well. They might think, oh, maybe I want one of these for home. Maybe if it's like the next version or like a scaled down version or what have you. There's a lot of folks who have used tech in their workplace and only have started, then after using it in the workplace, have realized that maybe this is the kind of thing that they would like for themselves. Similarly, there's some talk about the Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro, as a potential healthcare machine. And Sharp Healthcare is exploring this for anything to use for anything from to display medical records, filling a doctor's field of view with anything from graphs of a patient's blood pressure over time to the results of their latest chest X-ray. So, using the high-res screens in the Vision Pro to be able to pull all this information into one place and be able to provide real-time information to healthcare professionals in the various settings they might find themselves, whether it's anesthesiologists or technicians doing readings. Maybe eventually, with the help of some AI, you can see these devices starting to help interpret some of this stuff as well. So then you've got the whole bedside manner app side of things. Do you really want to be speaking to a healthcare professional who's got one of these things strapped to their face? So thinking on that initial enterprise side, Will, any thoughts about the importance of kind of business applications and enterprise applications? Have you experienced any technology for yourself in the workplace and you've been like, this is kind of cool, maybe I'll get this for myself?
Yeah, I mean, right now I have basically a Wacom tablet, like Cintiq at work. These are fairly expensive things. They're basically interfaces where you're drawing on a screen. And I think there's somewhere between, $1,500 and $2,500 for one of these tablets. I kind of want one at home. I miss it when I'm at home, especially when I'm working at home. But man, that's expensive. So for me, that doesn't make sense to buy one of those at home. But they are very useful and very cool. I really enjoy the one that I have at work. So that's one thing off the top of my head. I know a lot of people, especially I have some friends who are accountants, that was kind of the Trojan horse for iPhones, is when they started getting accepted into bigger companies, because Blackberries were very prevalent. So once they started to be able to use an iPhone, they sort of got addicted to iPhones. So at least 2 or 3 people I know. So I mean, I think that was a way of people getting more comfortable with phones or smartphones. So I've heard anecdotes about that, or seen people who have converted, who are diehard BlackBerry users that suddenly started using Apple devices because that's what their work was switching to. So yeah, my main thing is the tablet, but yeah. How about you? Is there anything that you've used for work?
I'm trying to think. I think in most cases, because bad with money and all, have had most tech that I would want to try before it was being used in a workplace. I mean, maybe the exception being a laser eye surgery clinic. Was like, oh, it'd be cool to have one of these lasers at home to like do a LASIK surgery, but that's probably not going to happen.
I'm a professional. Just
exactly.
Be still.
I'll just give me a dozen years while I go to medical school and learn how to become a ophthalmic surgeon and the like. But I think you and I both, having worked in tech media off and on over the years, we got to test out a number of devices, and I think that has opened up our eyes to certain things like PVRs and DVRs, for example.
For sure.
Even like early digital cameras, even playing with some handheld. I remember we got our hands on the Nintendo DS, the original form factor before it was actually released. It was a lot chunkier, and then a few months later, it actually came out for real. I was like, oh, well, that's different than the one that we tried. I mean, I didn't go out and buy one myself, but it kind of opened my eyes to the benefits of having a handheld gaming device like that. I'd never had a Game Boy, and I eventually inherited a PSP, a PlayStation Portable, from a friend of mine. And of course, now mobile gaming is largely on smartphones and tablets. But so that's just one thing that pops to the top of my head. And I think, we got to take a lot of that stuff onto various newscasts and whatnot, and just being kind of, soaking in that tech realm for a while. Like you kind of like feel like you got to get the latest and greatest. So of course,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
So when the iPhone came out, I went to the States to get one. Same with the iPad. They were both out a while, but like for anywhere from a few months to at least a year before they came out in Canada. And, I was kind of had the idea of doing the same thing here with the Apple Vision Pro, but as mentioned last week, I just haven't gotten around to it because it's kind of complicated. Anyhow, please go on, Will.
So I was actually, one of my most, I guess, clear memories about technology is when you got the iPhone and brought it up from the States, like some sort of Robin Hood, and just how people used it so intuitively. I mean, I think that's a bit different because it didn't really convert me, other than just it was cool to see it. The other one that, the other one that's really random is, I think it was when we worked together at Chalk Media. I had a KVM switch.
Keyboard, video, keyboard, video, and mouse, right?
Yeah, video, mouse.
Yeah.
And basically, it's so you could use 2 different computers and still use the same screen and same keyboard. And I started doing that at home as well, because I had a desktop and eventually I had a laptop. So I did that for a little while just because I got, it was actually partly because I was working on some projects with Limestone. And so I needed a laptop that I could bring around and stuff like that. So, so I was using 2 devices and a KVM switch, and I found out and liked KVM switches from my time at Chalk. So, that's one thing that I kind of didn't know all that much about. I think you helped set me out with it. So partly because when we worked on a client's work, they had a computer that I was using, but I was also bringing a laptop from Chalk Media. So Anyways, long story short, KVM switch.
So one thing that that you just reminded me of, and this is a little bit of an aside. Well, there's two things. Uh, One is that, can you believe it's been almost 17 years since the iPhone release? When I went and got that, it was in the fall of 2007. I went and got that iPhone.
Yeah.
So there's that. The second thing is your mention of the KVM switch reminded me that something I just finally started using on my laptop and iPad was something called universal control. And it was announced with iOS 15.4 on the iPad OS 15.4 and Mac OS Monterey. And what it lets you do, it's super, super cool. And I remember watching some demos of it at the time, and I can't remember, was our show even going at the time?
I think it was. I think we talked about this on the show.
And you have your laptop, here, and you have your iPad here, and beside each other, and you could just drag your pointer from one screen to the other, and you could control stuff on your iPad using the keyboard and mouse, whether the built-in ones from your MacBook or external ones. You could control your iPad from that same, and you just go back and forth, and you could copy and paste things. You could drag certain things like documents and media files and whatnot from one to the other. And I just I'd kind of forgotten about it for a while, I guess. And I was just using it last week when we had an office day, or a couple weeks ago. I'm like, wait a second, why don't I just do this? Because you get so used to your multi-monitor setup at home. Like I've got the iMac and two 27-inch monitors downstairs in our home office here, and I go to our regular office. I've got a similar setup there, but when we're doing collaborative work in kind of the common area, I just have this little 13-inch screen on my M1 MacBook Air. So you've got my little 11-inch or Mac iPad Air next to it, and then you get a bit more room to maybe put up your messaging apps or something on there. So it just makes it a little more productive. And it's wild. You just drag it from one to the other. Occasionally you need to tell it what side it's on. Sometimes it can kind of auto detect, unless it's got a 50% chance, I suppose, of getting it. But universal control, if any Apple users out there, if you haven't tried that yet, if you happen to have a Mac, whether it's an iMac or a MacBook Pro, and an iPad, and they're both running relatively current operating systems, give it a go. It's super cool. Universal makes you feel like you're in the future.
Universal Control. I like their first album. Weren't they big in the 80s?
Exactly.
Universal Control.
Beep, beep, boop, boop. So one of the I can't wait until their next track drops on Tuesday. So one of the things with that in mind that I found a little disconcerting about the Apple Vision Pro, however, is that even though you can use it with an external Bluetooth keyboard, like your Apple keyboard and an Apple trackpad, it sounds like you can't currently use it with a Bluetooth mouse, like even your Apple Magic Mouse, which is I mean, I guess because the mouse, even though it does have a touch surface and you can do some gestures on it, it doesn't support quite the same number of gestures as the trackpad does. And I know some people, like, again, if you've got a MacBook Pro, they've got giant trackpads on them now, and you can do all sorts of exotic gestures, and they can be quite handy. But a lot of folks, instead of a mouse, they use an external Magic trackpad, because everything's Magic with Apple, right? You have that, and you can do all those same gestures. I still prefer a mouse personally because I enjoy repetitive stress injury. And, but so we'll see if Apple changes their tune on this, because I would kind of like, maybe I just finally need to break down and start using a trackpad more. But I just like having the change of pace and being able to use a mouse once in a while when I'm not, when I don't have my laptop on my lap and being forced to use the trackpad. So we're going to have to watch this space here, seeing what these various external accessories will and won't do on the Apple Vision Pro. Now, again, as people are starting to get their hands on these devices in the wild, aside from the chosen few people who have had previews last summer and a couple of weeks ago, we're starting to get some hot takes, some editorials, some perspectives, and there's an article in TechCrunch that talks about some of the things that the Vision Pro seems to do well and should probably lean into in order to succeed. And it talks about immersive gaming. There are a few demos that come in with the Apple Vision Pro, including this dinosaur experience where you can occupy the same rocky terrain with a dinosaur, and you can and then there's things like you can put your hand up and a butterfly will come and land on it, like a prehistoric butterfly, and the dinosaur will approach you because it knows where you are. And we've seen dinosaurs. I don't know what it is with dinosaurs and VR, virtual reality. I know that one of the Samsung VR headsets had a dinosaur thing too, but even that, and that was a few years ago. I tried that. I was like, whoa, it does really put you in the scene. So I can imagine that the Vision OS one on the Apple Vision Pro is pretty startling. So fitness, that's going to be interesting because I'm not sure how much like jumping around you'll want to do with a 1 pound headset on your face, but maybe some of the gentler things. But the having the hands-free aspect could be handy, so to speak. If you don't have to like have like referring to a tablet or a smartphone while you're trying to do certain types of workouts. So we'll see how that develops.
Can I
And
tell you,
mhm.
I've been going to the gym again recently. I think I've been
Good
I've
job.
told you that, and you do see people checking their phones a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
some of it is checking Instagram, but some of it is all these fitness apps, and some of it you can do from your watch, but some of it you actually need to look at your phone. So I know for myself, I use my Ultra 2, and I mostly just use the watch. I try not to use the phone. But if
Mm-hmm.
you really want to dive into some of the things like blood oxygen level and things like that, you might have to dive in to your phone for certain elements. So it is definitely a thing where it for me, it'd been a while since I've really gone to a gym, probably about 5 years, just because of pandemic and other fun stuff. And I feel like what last time I went to the gym, phones weren't as much of a thing, and now
Mm-hmm.
phones are like a huge thing. Almost everyone is on their phone at some point, whether it's entertainment or actually tracking their exercise.
So you just imagine maybe not this device per se at this size and weight, but a future iteration where it becomes more compatible with being able to do a workout, whether at the gym or at home. So you're getting that real time heads up display without having to constantly check your watch or your phone or what have you. And you could start to see how that sort of on the face experience might make sense. And that's what so much of this is about right now in these early days. It's using one's imagination because things always get, over time tend to get, cheaper, lighter, faster, more energy efficient, and so on, or some, mix of trade-offs between those things. So most of the people you see online right now in the comment sections who are just like just beaking off about this and that. And it's like, have you actually tried this device? Have you actually like thought more than 10 seconds about what it could be, and just or are you just like so obsessed with getting your hot takes in there to like to score clout, right? So yeah, it's one of these rare times in tech where it feels like there may be a bit of a shift going on. And to be fair, Apple is standing on the shoulders of, I guess, giants, and to a certain extent with all the groundwork laid by companies such as Oculus, which was bought by Meta with now it's, I guess, up the Meta Quest 3. We had Microsoft HoloLens, which was very interesting and powerful and didn't really go anywhere for a variety of reasons. Magic Leap, I think, ended up being a bit of an abortive project on its own. And Apple was like just sitting back. They talked about AR, augmented reality, for quite a while, but they apparently they've been working on this for 8 years. So it's not like they were just like twiddling their thumbs and waiting to see what everyone else was going to do. They had their own approach. And I haven't confirmed this, but I read somewhere that on at least one of the patents related to the Apple Vision Pro that Steve Jobs is listed. So they may have been working on it, at least in concept, further back than 8 years, because he died more than
Oh
10 years
wow,
ago, right? Or 12
yeah.
years ago. So that's kind of interesting. But like I said, I could stand to be corrected on that. But I think a couple of the use cases that are coming clear for sure are entertainment. The being able to have like a gigantic screen in front of you, no matter how big your living space is, and not having to argue with your spouse about the size of TV you might have in said space. But if you could have a virtual 100-inch screen, that's pretty cool, because how many people could afford a 100-inch TV? Those are tens of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And projectors are cool, and you can get 100-inch display from a projector, but it's, again, having the space for it, having the light control, and so on. So yeah, entertainment for sure. And we've seen Disney Plus native Vision OS app right out of the gate. Max in the States, formerly HBO Max, they've got a native Vision OS app. Conspicuous by their absence, Netflix and YouTube, but apparently YouTube is working on an app. But the weird thing with both of those, I think we may have mentioned this last week, is that both of them, I'm sorry, neither of them have their iPad apps available for download on the Vision Pro. And that, because that's the thing, is like you potentially have access to literally millions of apps that work on the iPad. But because by default it's checked, like for developers, they have to go and uncheck a box if they don't want their iPad app to work on the Vision Pro. So it almost feels like spiteful. Oh, Spotify is another one too. You can't use the Spotify iPad app on the Apple Vision Pro. So either these, there's been some developer issues over the last couple of years, some spats with Apple. So either they're just being vindictive, or they're taking a wait and see approach, or maybe they're actively developing native Vision Pro apps, and they don't want people to get the wrong impression by a subpar experience using their iPad app. Because with an iPad app, you're not going to enjoy quite the same amount of integration and all the features that you would in a Vision Pro app. But so again, TBD with those guys, but it sounds like at the very least, YouTube's going to have a native app. In the meantime, there is an app that some people have been talking about, and it might be in one of our other stories, that is a YouTube player, and that is available on the Vision OS App Store. Anyhow, so it'll probably come up in this article. I just wanted to talk about some of the most useful Apple Vision Pro apps that seem to have been available at launch. Microsoft got right in the game. They've become increasingly important partner for Apple for the last little while, especially since their pivot away from Windows so much and more to the cloud over the last decade, allowing things like optimized apps for the iPad and iPhone from the Office 365 suite of apps, and now known as Microsoft 365. So apparently 7 of the company's Office apps are available to install on the Apple Vision Pro. Are you ready, Will? This is like living the dream. Teams, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, and Loop, whatever that is. So
I don't know what Loop is.
So, I mean, you talk about business applications, cool. Like, I don't know how many people in business are using these, but lots of folks are using Teams. And if you could do and so Zoom is one of the other apps that non-Microsoft app that people have been talking about. And it apparently ties into the personas, like that kind of uncanny valley virtual avatar feature that Vision OS has, that obviously look a little strange at the beginning, but when people are actually using them with each other, they're like, oh, you actually get used to it. And I'm sure they're only going to get better. So maybe Teams will hook into that as well, just like Zoom is. Disney Plus, as we mentioned, there's Zoom there. MLB and NBA. So for sports fans, you could see some really interesting potential there for all sorts of different types of data coming through while you're watching games. This is one thing that I really noticed in my more recent outings to Vancouver Canucks NHL games, like in person here in Vancouver, is so much data they've got up on the new Jumbotron, and they've got rounded corners. So you've got your 4 main surfaces, but instead of hard corners, they've got rounded corners. And on those rounded corners, they've got real-time stats like who's on the ice currently for each team and how many seconds or minutes they've been on the ice. Or sometimes they flip over to like how fast a shot was, and like kind of like what you see on certain TV broadcasts. So similar kind of idea here, but up to a whole new level with something like the Apple Vision Pro, where you could have all sorts of data around you if you were a data junkie. And I guess that kind of stuff is especially great for people who like to bet on sports on every single little every single little aspect. Max from Warner, the formerly HBO Max, available there. There's something called Lowe's Style Studio, which looks kind of interesting. It's let's Apple Vision Pro owners step into an immersive, interactive 3D kitchen scene, allowing you to experiment in ways that weren't possible until now. So yeah, kitchen designers like friend of the show, Jamie Reynolds. I mean, he's not really an Apple guy, but maybe tools like this, either from Apple or others, as they become more commonplace, could provide some interesting opportunities for customer engagement there. There's another app called Game Room, which includes tabletop classics in mixed reality or full VR, such as chess, solitaire, hearts, yacht, whatever that is, and Sea Battle, which is kind of like Battleship. And so I saw a demo of someone playing chess, and you're able to go and grab the pieces with your hand. You don't need controllers, right? You're just using your hands for all these things. So that's kind of cool. And of course, there's about 600 total, a number of native Vision OS apps available for the Apple Vision Pro. Everything from golf, Red Bull TV, IMAX. That'd be kind of cool, viewing 2D and 3D content. Also, some gaming, lots of entertainment, some productivity stuff. So, what kind of stuff might you want to do? Were you to get your hands on something like this? Well,
I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of bigger screens. Gaming sounds cool, but gaming, it's often a gimmick. It really needs to
Fruit Ninja.
Sorry?
Fruit Ninja.
Fruit Ninja, yeah. It needs to be something that makes sense, and you can actually play like pretty extensively. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of times with gaming, I don't like to be the person. I like to pretend to be somebody else. So, I like the third person kind of perspective on things. So I don't know, gaming, augmented reality in terms of like heads up displays and things like that would be pretty cool. Yeah, just off the top of my head.
And to be fair, there are some game demos I've seen that aren't necessarily first person. You can still do the third person sort of approach with these games, but you're still quite immersed in the world of that character that you're controlling, even if you're not in their shoes per se. So let's move on to a couple of other interesting applications here. One is, for what it's worth, OpenAI just announced that ChatGPT is now available for the Apple Vision Pro. And okay, cool. It doesn't look super interesting. It basically just looks like their app. So, kind of a low effort offering so far. It's like just kind of looks like what you'd see on an iPhone or iPad, or not too different from the web view. But hey, they're there. So I think what will get more interesting is that if it can integrate well with the voice function on there, especially without having to tap the stupid little icon on the ChatGPT interface. But I think that's the kind of case where you might start bumping up against Apple and what they want to do with Siri, should they ever give it a brain transplant like we've been hoping and praying for seems like a long time now. So the native support for voice assistants that are not from Apple might be a little challenging, let's say. So, hey, there you go. ChatGPT, now a native Apple Vision Pro app. And I mentioned some folks who have been putting the Apple Vision Pro through its paces, and leave it to none other than longtime YouTuber Casey Neistat to do something a little different with the Apple Vision Pro, including wandering around the streets of New York, either on his scooter, or is he a scooter guy or skateboard guy? I couldn't tell what it was he was actually wearing there. It looks like a skate, or maybe it's something like an electric skateboard. So he did a little bit of that. Again, folks, be very, very careful. But apparently, it's such a high refresh rate pass-through display that people are able to do things like this in the real world and not be like crashing into things too much. But he gave examples of navigating the subway system, watching videos, sitting in the subway and doing some computing, chatting with people about what they thought, what their impressions were of this dude sitting here with what looked like fancy ski goggles on while he's attending to his tasks sitting on the subway. Now, I would be concerned about connectivity, because I think so many of the types of apps that you would want to be using would rely on a strong, stable internet connection. And I know in a lot of places, especially say like London in the UK, once you go down to the underground, the cellular connection is terrible. Some places I imagine have been improving things over time. I'm not sure what it's like in New York, but it's kind of neat to see what Casey Neistat got up to, and offered his perspectives on the Apple Vision Pro and what it represents. And he seems to be totally in the bag for it. He's not necessarily, and he's an Apple user, but he's never come across to me as like a huge Apple fanboy per se. Mm-hmm. But he is really excited and optimistic about what this represents. So you've got this kind of stuff, and then you've got people. It never fails, Will. People are going to do dumb things, and so we've got people driving around in their cars. So maybe using the quote unquote full self-driving mode with their Teslas. Like this one dude wearing his Apple Vision Pro and doing some computing while the car drives for him. Cool, but you're gonna get in trouble eventually. In this video, it ends with him in a parking lot, and you see cop cars with flashing lights. Now, I've heard that this is actually kind of staged. I've seen some commentary that they were only doing the whole thing using the device for 30 or 40 seconds while on the road, and the whole thing with the cop cars was actually either unrelated or kind of staged. But a lot of people added context on X, formerly Twitter, as we must say, that don't use this while operating a moving vehicle. Distracted driving, boo boo boo, and there's laws against this. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious that that's not the kind of thing you should do. But again, people would like to push the limits of full self-driving or autonomous driving on the various cars, which most notably Teslas. And of course, you've got Cybertruck drivers doing the same thing, of course, in a Tesla. I don't know if that's that same dude. Oh, it looks like it might be someone else. And of course, it's easy for people to pile on because they have a hate on for all things Tesla nowadays. One of the other Tesla kind of related demonstrations that was kind of cool, however, was using the Apple Vision Pro as a key for Tesla vehicles and being able to use the Tesla app in your Apple Vision Pro so you could do things like unlock the trunk while wearing heads. I mean, I don't know who's going to do this in real life, but it's just kind of neat that you could have that that app in your visual space and interact as you saw fit. A lot of this is just kind of playing around to see what actually makes sense out in the real world. But so those are the first few of our stupid Apple Vision Pro tricks to mention. Any thoughts so far before we dive into the next few?
No, I mean, this is always, people seems to be a race to do these dumbass things. So
get the views. You got to get those views on YouTube and
get the views.
TikTok and all that stuff. So here are a few other things maybe you shouldn't do. So we talked about, don't drive a car while wearing Apple Vision Pro. Don't wear it while running. That seems right. And maybe Casey Neistat, don't wear it while skateboarding through Manhattan, perhaps. Don't use it in unsafe locations. Of course, around stairs, balconies, railings, glass, mirrors, sharp objects, sources of excessive heat, windows, or other hazards. Especially maybe not near a balcony if you happen to be in Russia. You never know, right? Don't wear the Vision Pro while intoxicated, right? Well, I guess especially if from what I've heard, that one of the challenges for some folks with the different types of VR and AR headset, mixed reality headsets, and the like, is dizziness. We haven't heard a ton of reports of that yet because the latency is so low. Apparently the pass through is so fast on these things that you're not getting any or very much lag at all. So that's a plus. But imagine the kind of lag that's introduced when you're drunk. It probably wouldn't mix very well with something like an Apple Vision Pro.
For sure.
Medical conditions, Apple advises not to use the Apple Vision Pro if you feel unwell, if you're pregnant or have a pre-existing medical conditions such as migraine headaches, an eye or vision condition, an inner ear condition, or a psychological condition. So these certain experiences on the Apple Vision Pro may aggravate your symptoms or increase the chances for discomfort. And here's one that was new to me, especially: do not give the Vision Pro to children under 13 to use. And Apple said, it's designed to fit and be used by individuals 13 years of age and older, and should not be used by children under the age of 13. Furthermore, children ages 13 years and older should be supervised by an adult while wearing an Apple Vision Pro. I think part of that is like, hey, you realize this is at least $3,500 US, right? And maybe if you don't want your thing to get wrecked, keep an eye on your teen, because maybe they don't quite understand the value of a dollar quite yet. But for little folks, yeah, the fit, of course, their heads are going to be smaller. And I think the jury's still out on possible neurological impacts. We've seen over time, like for the last couple of centuries, actually, the impact of reading close up, and how that's theorized to be related to the increase in nearsightedness in people over the last several decades. And then, of course, we get to the age of personal computing. Most of our friends will wear some kind of corrective lenses, and a lot of us grew up, if not reading, then like on devices, like mostly like computers, whether it's our Commodore 64s or sitting in front of the TV playing video games or just watching TV a little too close. You know, your parents always used to yell at us, saying, "Don't sit too close to the TV." Well, maybe they had something, because just your irises, like in your eyes, like are muscles, right? And when you're focusing on things close to you so much over time, it makes, I guess, more difficult to focus on things further away where you should be. So similarly, if you have youngsters using Apple Vision Pro where the focal distances are not what your eyes might expect necessarily, I think it's about 4.5 feet, which is sort of medium. It's just far enough away that if you need glasses for distance, that you're going to need the corrective lens inserts from Zeiss to add more cost. But it's still close enough up that if you need reading glasses, you're going to need the reader's insert. So it's kind of like the worst of both worlds. So anyhow, they also say don't use it for too long. Some people have said, after half an hour or maybe even an hour, it starts to get a little uncomfortable, depending on what head strap you're using. The single band strap looks cooler, but it's not quite as comfortable in the long term. If you wear the strap that's got the top portion, apparently you can go for much longer. But Apple recommends taking regular breaks, which makes sense not only for your for your brain, but also for your neck and shoulders and all that kind of thing too. So but don't drive wearing it. Okay. Anything to add before we go on to our next stupid APV tricks?
No, let's do it.
Okay. So Sam from let's see, what is his YouTube channel called? Apple Track. So Sam from Apple Track did a durability test on the Apple Vision Pro. This is something that folks like to do with new devices to see how well they hold up to punishment. And as you can imagine, hilarity ensued. And he did a number of tests, just walking into walls, just to see how they might hold up to incidental contact, dropping on the floor from various heights, and found that the side strappy things where the speakers are tended to give way first. And then he tried smashing with his hand against the wall, and then dropping from various heights. And it actually, even though the speaker connector things kind of gave way first, the glass itself held up better than expected after a series of 7 drops. But then when it came to the 8th drop, the extreme drop where it may have had a chance to reach terminal velocity, let's just say the Apple Vision Pro didn't fare quite as well on drop number 8. And the outer glass smashed in spectacular fashion. But I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story. I'd encourage people to go and check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes, because there is more than one layer of glass on the Apple Vision Pro. And just watch the rest to find out, if it was still usable after the outer layer was totally shattered. So, I know that we're both bad with money in our own respects. I think maybe you're a little bit better with it than I am, but can you imagine spending $3,500 US and just smashing this thing on purpose?
Yeah.
But if you're getting
writing it off.
Yeah, you're getting the views. Well, 274,000 views. How much if he's only making it from money off of AdSense? That's only $1,100 so far. So he's got to get a few more. Roughly. If it's monetized, so he's got to get some more views to cover the cost. of that video. But that's what people do, is like they want to be the first to do that, and get those views to see what people say. It's like you're living vicariously through others who are making poor life choices.
Yeah, there's a lot of like running to destroy stuff or running to be the first person in, a certain land or buying the thing first or whatever it is.
So I think that's probably almost enough Apple Vision Pro talk for today. I just want to leave folks with a couple of links to check out. Well, actually, one more link, and that is MKBHD, Marquez Brownlee. Finally, he dropped a series of 3 videos on the Apple Vision Pro over the last week. First, there was an unboxing, and he goes through in meticulous detail about all the wild packaging that Apple surrounds their device with, and their nice premium packaging, of course. And then he did a second kind of high-level overview of the Apple Vision Pro, and then his third video, just released on February 3rd. It's already at 6.6 million views, where he does his in-depth review of the Apple Vision Pro. And Marquez Brownlee is one of the more well-respected reviewers out there. He calls them like he sees them. His daily driver of smartphone is an Android phone. I think he's using one of the Samsung ones at the moment. He does use iPhones as well. He uses Mac equipment for his editing and whatnot, but he's pretty well respected and generally pretty objective. And he talks about the pros and the cons of the Apple Vision Pro as he sees it at this point. And so, if people are looking for interesting perspective from a tech reviewer who's been doing his thing for over a decade now, since he was a teenager, check out Marquez Brownlee's series of 3 videos, or at the very least his last one, which is called Tomorrow's Ideas, Today's Tech. And then there's one other thing that I couldn't find that I saw, which was so cool, Will. And if I can find it before we publish, I'll add a link in the show notes. And it was this one demo I saw of a fellow using the Apple Vision Pro, and he was setting up persistent windows in different rooms of his house. So he had his workspace with, the different apps he was using. And then he would walk over to his like quote unquote TV room or TV watching area. And he had like the giant screen set up there that was persistent. And he walked over to his kitchen, and he had his like shopping list, basically quote unquote attached to the front of the fridge. Mm-hmm. And he walked around his house, and this stuff like stays there. So when you take off the Apple Vision Pro, you put it back on, it remembers where all of these windows are in your house, which I gotta admit is pretty cool. Now, apparently it does not survive a restart or a software update. So then you've got to set up all your windows again in all those rooms. I mean, that's the kind of thing that might be fixed with a future update, so that you don't have to redo that work. But people who are starting to push the envelope and just like, again, using their imagination to see like how they could use this in the most productive way. And that's kind of like, again, imagine once these devices are smaller on our face, over time they're going to get smaller and smaller. And if you have a pair of glasses that are maybe the size of what Meta's Ray-Ban glasses are now, that have a fraction of the functionality but are cool in their own way and actually have some AI smarts, but if you had something like that, which are basically like a slightly chunky pair of glasses, sort of like classic Ray-Ban Wayfarers, to walk around your home and have all your windows there, would be pretty cool. But for now, people are forging the path for us, wearing these giant ski goggle-like things on their faces. So, Minority Report, here we come, Will.
Sounds good. I'm all for it.
All right. That's enough Vision Pro stuff for now. Let's watch this space, because I'm sure the people will be doing even more stupid AVP tricks. Mm-hmm. Very quickly, we had a couple of space stories here that we were hoping to have Gray's input on. We'll just leave the links in the show notes for you folks to take a look at if you're interested. There's a handful of stories from January about some recent space discoveries. One, scientists discover enough Mars ice to cover the planet in water. So basically, a lot of this ice, and this is water ice, not simply dry ice, as we knew that was on Mars. This is actually water ice, and is enough hidden in the rocks and in various places and the polar caps to cover the entire planet in an ocean that's anywhere from 5 to 8.8 feet deep. So, I mean, it's like swimming pool depth. Perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it might be a little chilly, but again, the presence of that much water kind of lends to the intriguing notion of, was there ever life there? Could there ever be life in the future? If we wanted to terraform, that's maybe the kind of amount of water that we're looking at to work with. One of the other stories that has come up, rumors have been circulating, that the James Webb telescope, space telescope, has discovered life on another world. Now, apparently it's a little controversial because the Spectator was reporting on this story, and there was a source that was quoted, and this woman says that her remarks were taken out of context. But regardless, the James Webb Space Telescope just has so much more functionality, resolution. It can see so much further into space and effectively back in time, when you think about it, given how old some of this light is that it is discovering things about other solar systems and other worlds that the Hubble simply couldn't resolve. So even if it hasn't discovered quote unquote life on another world yet, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that from its different functionality and analysis, they can tell what sort of elements are on different celestial bodies from a distance. If some of those elements include things like hydrogen, oxygen, and whatnot in the right combinations, maybe we could find life. So if you're interested in those stories, have a look at the links in the show notes. But speaking of life, Will, again, we're not too much gaming this week, but we got to talk a little gaming since Deja's not here. Some people might be wondering if the Apple Vision Pro could run Doom. I think there's probably some web versions of Doom that you could get going on there. I couldn't find any people actually trying it yet, but some folks, this one researcher managed to, quote, run Doom, unquote, on gut bacteria.
Cool.
So it's not just on your handheld device, on your computer, or various pocket calculators, scientific calculators. So what these folks managed to do is, this is an MIT graduate student named Lauren Ramlan outlined a method for creating a Doom display encoded in E. coli for the display of interactive digital media. So basically, they managed to shrink Doom down to a 32 by 48 black and white bitmap and display images from Doom. So you're not actually playing Doom using this gut bacteria, but you're rendering individual frames from Doom using Python as a go-between to activate this E. coli. And it would take 70 minutes to reach the peak display output during the cycle, and a full 8 hours and 20 minutes for the E. coli to return to its starting state. So that translates into 0.00003 frames per second. So if you wanted to play Doom for a 5-hour mega session of Doom, it would take you almost 600 years.
Good times.
All right. So, okay, we're going to take this and flip it over to you, Will. If not gut bacteria, what is the one type of device that you would like to see someone be able to run Doom on, for either playing by yourself or some other device out in the world that hasn't yet been proven to play Doom?
Well, Mario is the big one to play on other systems. That's the one that I'm surprised people aren't trying to run, but I don't know how you would play it on
gut bacteria.
Gut bacteria.
Well, so speaking of Mario, if you wanted to run it on, say, an Apple Vision Pro, there are a number of sort of gray area online emulators for running all sorts of vintage systems. So you can conceivably be able to run something like Super Mario Brothers on Apple Vision Pro using something like that, because of course Apple doesn't allow emulators in their various app stores. But wouldn't you love to play Super Mario Brothers on your fancy new Apple Watch Ultra 2, Will?
Nope.
All right. Thanks for playing. So we've got some entertainment stories, but we're gonna skip them until let's save those for when Gray returns, and we'll move on to our momentous picks. What do you think about that?
Sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay, so let's start with you, William, and your momentous pick of the week is?
My momentous pick of the week is a little show that I went to with some friends, including Tristan Jutra.
Oh, and sounds like a handsome and intelligent fella.
Yes. So it was a concert movie of the Pet Shop Boys show Dream World. And I really, really enjoyed it. You know, I didn't have a lot of, I guess, expectations of a concert experience in a movie theater. I'd never been to one of these shows, like the Taylor Swift one, or there's been others. But I really actually enjoyed it. I was quite shocked. The other thing for me and my wife is that we were unable to go to see the Pet Shop Boys live when they came a few months back because she was recovering from illness. And so this kind of felt like a bit of a do-over. So I was very happy that we were able to go to this. And my wife is a big fan of the Pet Shop Boys, and I like the Pet Shop Boys. And so, yeah, it was really enjoyable, and went with friends, and it sort of felt like a bit of a revenge watch. And yeah,
until you get to see them live for real, which hopefully won't be too long, maybe in a couple of years.
I've never seen them live myself, so I wouldn't mind going again. My wife has been before. They didn't come here for a long time, she said, like in the 80s and 90s. They, you know, if they did a tour date, it might be in Toronto. But they very rarely came here, I guess, up until maybe 20 years ago or something, which sounds like a long time, but you got to remember they started in 81. So, yeah.
So I agree. I love the show. Sorry, not to cut you off, but here is my momentous pick of the week. Just yeah.
Bring her in.
Here she is. She doesn't love being held. But last week we showed you Isaac, our new member of our household here at Momentous HQ, and this is Isla. So
hi, Isla.
Isaac was a 20-month-old black kitty cat, and this is Isla, his sister. So they're a bonded pair that we've had for just over a week. And you can hear her. She's really happy about being picked up. Isaac is a little bit more user-friendly in the pick up and cuddle department. She's more of the, I'll come to you and sit on you when I damn well please. So, hi, this is your podcasting debut. You're done?
Yeah, hello.
I think she's done. Good, great work.
That was one of those deep,
Yeah. Oh, now she's going to go under the daybed. So, anyhow, Isla, my momentous pick this week.
Awesome. Love it.
So yeah, back to Pet Shop Boys Dream World. And thank you to my lovely wife, Stephanie, for risking life and limb to bring Isla into the studio here.
Seriously, she cut my arm.
Oh, she cut your arm. I'm sorry. Oof. Agreed on Pet Shop Boys Dream World, the greatest hits live. We saw that together at International Village here in Vancouver. There's a group of about 8 of us, which was it was lots of fun. I'm glad to have shared that experience with you, and hopefully we'll be able to share an actual Pet Shop Boys concert experience together in the future.
I would love that. Yeah, I mean, as viewers of the show might know, I'm big into making music, and you know, they're really up my alley in terms of the instrumentals and the synths, and I think I annoyed my wife a couple times by going, "Oh, that's an 808. They're using an 808." She's like, yeah, okay, cool. That's one of their old songs.
and for any parents of ours that might be listening, he was referring to a Roland TR-808, electronic rhythm composer, also known as a drum machine from the 80s. Now,
yeah,
and they're worth a couple of grand now at least. If
yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on to our momentous projects this week. Well, what do you got?
Do it.
It's not beats from you this week. It's something a little different.
Yeah. So what I have this week is I guess I don't talk about this very often. I work for a video game company, and the name of the company is Clay Entertainment.
And that's
And
KLEI.
yes, Clay rhymes with play. And our studio has been working on this game for a while now. It's been announced for over a year. And I am not a game programmer or a artist for games, but I do help with marketing and promotion and helping out with trailers and visuals and things like that. Um, and I actually did some of the gameplay, very hard work in this trailer. So you know, I've just this is the first sort of game that I've been very involved with in terms of marketing and promotion. And yeah, it's I'm although I'm a very minor member of all that goes on in terms of producing a game. I love working at a video game studio, and I'm very proud of this game for what it's worth. And besides the fact that I work for the company that makes this, Rotwood, um,
The
it's
game's
just
called Rotwood.
game's called Rotwood. It's
Excellent.
a super fun game. It's totally up my alley. It's in the sort of spiritual successor of things like X-Men Arcade, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Lost in or Turtles in Time, Sunset Riders a little bit, but it's also got the modern element of what they call rogue-like or rogue-lite, things like Hades, things like that. So I can't say enough good things about this game, and I'm glad that I was, part of the marketing and part of the game launch in even a small way. But big shout out! You're watching the trailer right now to my co-workers Kyle and Corey and the audio team that worked so diligently on this trailer. So again, happy just to be a small part and help out wherever I can. And yeah, this is a really great game. Right now it's in demo. So there's a week demo that's going on now until next Monday, I believe. And yeah, just check it out. It's free at the moment. So check it out. And hopefully when it's done development, pick up a copy and enjoy it.
And so that's available on the Steam store at store.
Right now, it's only available on Steam. Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You just think back to when we were growing up playing video games, and if we knew that a couple of decades later you'd be able to play basically what looked like cartoons, but sort of 3D-ish, fully animated interactive cartoons, because that's what that's why it's so cool with these the diversity of styles we're seeing in video games nowadays. I think Cuphead was a big moment for that, which saw a lot of 1930s, 1920s and 1930s style animation gameplay, which was kind of neat. And then Rotwood has kind of got its own unique style here, which seems to be a blend of a few different elements. So it's really exciting time to be in, where we're seeing so many different approaches. It's not all just kind of like photorealistic stuff or retro pixely stuff. There's everything in between.
Yeah, and that's the other sort of strength of Clay, is that we do not only we specialize obviously in games that look really good, and we have a lot of games that look really good in my personal biased opinion, but it's also about gameplay. So those are the two things that we do really well, is things that look visually stunning and things that also play really well and are really quality. So we're really known for those two things, and I'm just proud to be a part of the company. And like you say, there's space for all these things, and this is the nice thing about Steam, is it's given an avenue for smaller game developers to really be able to shine.
Good stuff. Well, we look forward to giving it a try sometime.
Yeah.
Maybe you can give me a personal demo. How about that?
I would love to.
Because I would not be good at it. All right.
Yeah.
So our friend and colleague, the lovely talented Tasia Custodi, has yet another video. What a trooper. This week, she did a video on how to use Video Boost, whatever that is, on the Google Pixel 8 Pro. See, if she was here, she could tell us exactly what that's about. But I didn't get a chance to watch the full video. But based on her track record, I can assure you that it is a great recap. And unlike our little show here, she nails it in under 9 minutes. Also,
Sweet.
Speaking of Tasia, she and I had another episode of AI Named This Show last Friday, shoring up the fate of OpenAI. So we had a bunch of news from OpenAI and Google and some stuff about some nasty deepfake news and whatnot. But you can check that out at AINamedThisShow.com. And of course, if you could check out Tasia's work at TasiaCustodi.com and YouTube.com/TasiaCustodi. And you can find out more about us here at this little show called Momentous Live and all our other momentous stuff that we do once in a while at www.momentous.tv. Well, we did it, just you and me. Hopefully Gray will join us next week. And hopefully
Just the
Tasia again
two
sometime
of
in the
us.
future. And maybe I should get off my butt and line up some guests for such circumstances. But in the meantime, I think we did okay.
Sounds
or better
good.
than okay. How about that?
We did awesome.
Yeah, C plus.
C plus.
All right. Well, I hope you and anyone else that might be out there, I hope we hope that your week is truly momentous.